Hello and welcome everyone. We're going to wait just a couple of seconds here to let anyone who's in the waiting room jump on the webinar. So I will be starting in just a few seconds. Okay. Welcome and thank you for joining us. If you are here with me today, good afternoon, and you're here for Renters Get Prepared, tips to help you get insured. Okay. First of all, I want to make sure everything's set up correctly and you can hear us okay. If you are having any problems at all hearing this webinar or seeing us, you can come into either the chat at the bottom on the toolbar or the Q&A and type that in and let us know, and we'll fix it and see what we can do so that you can hear us and communicate. Thank you. So my name is Carrie Waite. I'm the Colorado coordinator for United Policyholders. I started working with United Policyholders almost 9 years ago after a major wildfire, the Waldo Canyon fire in my neighborhood that destroyed hundreds of homes. Many of my friends lost their homes, and my home was damaged, severely damaged. And in the process of trying to help my neighbors and work on my own claim, I realized that we really needed someone to help educate us as to how to deal with these large loss insurance claims. And that's where United Policyholders came in, and they were a great help to us. So I ended up joining them first as a volunteer and then part-time, and then I have been also working with United Policyholders in the past year on a large fire recovery in the 3 counties in Colorado that had big fires last year that took out homes. So UP is a voice and information source for insurance consumers, people like us that buy insurance and use insurance in all 50 states. Our founders started our organization over 30 years ago, and we have been hanging in and growing ever since. We just celebrated our anniversary last month. We are subject matter experts when it comes to buying, filing claims, and dealing with the legal issues around insurance claims and legislation. We're supported by donors, grants, and volunteers. So we take no money from insurance interests, and that way we're able to stay objective and be a fair and honest source of information for you. And we're a trusted source for the media as well. The media often looks to us to comment on issues, and we speak up in courts, legislatures, and public policy forums on a regular basis. We do that through one of our 3 programs mostly, which is the one at the bottom here, which is Advocacy in Action. And in this is sort of our program where we work on legislation and on lawsuits where insurance consumers' voice needs to be heard and interests need to be represented. So we were a big part of the passage of the Colorado Homeowners Insurance Act of 2013. This is a picture here at the top of Governor Hickenlooper, the then governor, signing that law into being. And we were very instrumental. That was the year following my fire. And I'm in that picture, and I was involved there with our executive director and a number of our wonderful volunteers and folks from all over the state that helped with that effort. So we have learned things the hard way. And that has led us to be able to do the Roadmap to Preparedness program that this particular event is a part of, where we aim to help you prepare and shop wisely for insurance so that you can protect yourself and your belongings and be able to recover quickly should anything bad happen in the way of a natural disaster or an insurance covered event to your life. So this is me again, just a little bit about me. And I want to also pause for a second here and let you know that if you do have any questions, I really encourage you to type them into the Q&A down here. And I will be looking at that periodically and do my best to either give you the answer now or offer it to you at the end. You can also always email me at, and I'm going to type this into the chat so you can see it if you want to use this, carrie@uphelp.org. So that's carrie@uphelp.org in your email. And I will get that email, and I will do my best to get the answer for the questions that you have. We will also be sending you to the email that you used to register for this event, a PDF printable copy of these slides that you're looking at. So you don't need to furiously write down all the notes and links for the internet for this information, because we will be sending you these slides in a printable format so that you can look at this information and then as you need to refer to it. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's get into the weeds here. Tips from the trenches. So the information that we're sharing with you comes from those hard lessons we've learned by ourselves being victims of natural disasters or things like house fires, and having to navigate a large loss insurance claim. Thousands and thousands of people we have worked with over the years, over the 50 states, even lava flows in Hawaii, and volcanoes and all kinds of things, hurricanes, tornadoes, and hail, water intrusion, things like that. So we have taken this information and then we've looked at how the way you are insured up front and the way you document your belongings impacts your ability to recover when you need to use your insurance. Insurance money is the #1 source of money that helps people recover after a disaster. A lot of people think when there's a major disaster that it's the government and FEMA money that makes all the difference. And certainly it does when it comes to public infrastructure like roads and schools and bridges and utilities and things like that. But when it comes to the recovery of individuals, of their belongings, where they live, and their ability to get back to a productive life of working and taking care of family and themselves, it is insurance money that is the #1 source. The most you can basically recover from FEMA following a natural disaster would be around $36,000 for a household. And while that is a good amount of money and helpful, it is not enough to recover even the belongings of a typical family of 4, much less, where you live, to restore the buildings and things like that. Charitable aid comes into play as well and is very important. Things like the Red Cross and all the wonderful not-for-profits like us that come in and help people without charging or provide goods and services. But they generally only jump in for emergency immediate needs. The Red Cross can provide up to 3 nights of shelter if you don't have insurance, and that's about it. And maybe some immediate food and clothing needs. But it is insurance money that helps you really keep going. So in talking about insurance money for renters, it's a little different than for homeowners. It's sort of half of the picture, right? So if you own a home, whether it's a manufactured home, a mobile home, a cabin, a house, you generally are going to want to insure the house or the home itself, and that's the structure, as well as your belongings. And in renter's insurance, you're primarily covering your belongings, because it would be your landlord that would be responsible, the person you're renting from who owns the property. They would have a policy for the building itself. So that's kind of the difference. So in your renter's insurance policy, and now we're just talking about a homeowner's type of insurance policy and a renter's insurance policy, it would have your name and address on it. You would pay for it, and your goods would be covered. If you had a loss that was a covered loss from wildfire, wind, hail, someone breaking into your place and stealing your belongings or damaging them, a leak from mechanical plumbing from above, falling and damaging your property, those types of things, you would have a covered loss, and you would file a claim on your insurance in your name, and those claim dollar payments would come directly to you. So that would pay the cost to cover, to clean or replace, repair, replace, usually whichever is less, your belongings. Your belongings would be whatever you would take with you if you would move. So it would not be fixtures attached to the building that belong to the landlord, but rather your own personal belongings. Also, that basic renter's insurance policy covers some temporary rent if you're not able to live in that rental space that you're renting, until you can re-enter that space safely or get different living space to live in. And usually in Colorado and many other states, a renter's policy has a time limit as well as a dollar limit on how much they will cover in temporary rent. And it's often 2 weeks. So there may be also a dollar limit, but there is a time limit. If you have a homeowner's policy, if you own or the landlord has a policy on the building, the temporary living costs may be longer because they anticipate it will take longer to do the repairs than it would take for you to find somewhere new to live. So the second half of the equation of the insurance is the landlord's insurance policy. That policy would be paid for by the owner or landlord of the property. And he or she would take that, would, engage in buying that insurance policy, pay for it, and submit the claim for damage, and the money would go directly to him or her. The money would not go to you because it is only to cover their property, not your property that might be in that space. This would cover the cost to repair, replace, or rebuild the landlord's property in the building itself, which would include attached finishes, things like light fixtures, the appliances, the wall-to-wall carpeting, the flooring, things like this, sheetrock on the walls. So if this insurance is only going to cover your belongings and not the building, why would you bother taking it out? Well, it's very inexpensive relative to most types of insurance. So most renters insurance policies start at around $8 to $10 a month. And you can pay that often to the insurance company monthly by an automatic withdrawal to your credit card or bank. And or you could pay quarterly, or you can pay for it all at once. Basically, it's usually your choice based on the options the insurance company offers to you. So, you know, while it is still a significant expense for many people, it's around the cost of a lunch per month. And it's the best way to make sure you have cash when something bad happens to replace your belongings. So if a fire or another covered natural disaster destroys all of your things, this will help you be resilient and be able to keep on keeping on. It gives you help and time to figure out your next steps. So, you know, if in a wildfire, your apartment building was damaged and all of your belongings were damaged, even by fire suppression, like the fire hoses and the chemicals they use, you would not be able to live in that apartment complex, even if it didn't burn. And you would not be able to access your belongings. So all the what if scenarios, what if this happened, what if that happened, that many of us worry about, many of those scenarios, you would be greatly helped by having this type of insurance, because it would give you resources to immediately find a temporary place to live for at least 2 weeks while you think about what's next, and to buy those things you need emergently, even before you start replacing all of your belongings. Things like medicine, food, clothing, maybe a phone or computer. Oftentimes people leave in a hurry during natural disasters, or things get damaged even while they're evacuating, putting things in the car, that type of thing. So renter's insurance, standard renter's insurance covers fire. It usually also covers most types of storm damage other than rising floodwater. It covers theft and many other causes of loss. Another important note is many landlords and those that own these spaces that are for rent now are requiring that their renters take out renter's insurance. So we want to make sure if you're required to have it, that you can get it and you know what you're paying for. So we talked about a number of scenarios. Here's some more. If someone breaks into your home and steals your personal belongings, in that scenario, you would be covered up to the limits of the policy. That would be a covered event for your insurance. We talked about the fire or storm damage. We talked about damaging your personal things versus having them stolen. What if you're in your car, maybe traveling or at work, you have belongings in your car in the parking lot, and someone breaks into your car and steals your personal belongings that were in your car? That would not be covered normally by your automobile insurance. The car damage would be, but the belongings would not be. However, those belongings would be covered by your rental insurance. Most renters insurance will cover your personal belongings anywhere they are, as long as it is a covered event that happens and you have enough coverage purchased to cover the value minus the deductible. And I'll get into what a deductible is here shortly. Then another piece of the insurance that is important is what's called liability coverage. And this kicks in when you might have a guest or a worker in your apartment. And if something were to happen to them that could be negligence on your part, if they were to slip and fall on a spill, if you owned a dog and a dog were to bite them, if something like that happened, if you had someone over for dinner and they got food poisoning, there's just any number of things that can happen where you might have some exposure or risk to be sued for negligent liability. Renters insurance and homeowners insurance helps protect you against that. They provide a certain amount of coverage and defense should you be sued in your homeowners and renters insurance. So I've just talked about many things that are covered in renters insurance, and now we're going to talk about what is not covered. So things that would happen or to you that your insurance policy would not pay for, because we want you to be prepared and understand the difference so that you can fill in any gaps, perhaps with your savings, and be extra cautious about these types of perils. So if anyone in your household intentionally damages or destroys your property or your home, that would not be covered by insurance. The key word is intentional. If it's accidental, if you accidentally back into the garage door, or if you accidentally were to fall and poke a hole in the wall or something like that, that would in fact be covered in most policies. But if someone out of anger were to punch a hole in a wall, that would not be covered unless it was someone outside of your household that caused the damage. Earthquakes and mudslides are not covered under home insurance, whether it's renters or owners. So you would need to have a separate, what's called an endorsement or an additional policy to cover earthquake or land movement. And the same thing with flood. The term flood, that when we use it in the insurance world, it means rising water. So this would be when water rises up from overflow from storms or from runoff from storms above or from a storm surge, a river, a lake, anything like that, that is considered rising water, water outside of your property that would rise up and come and intrude in on the building you're living in and destroy your belongings, would have to be covered under a flood policy, not a renter's standard policy. And in the second part of this presentation shortly, I will explain about that type of insurance. So you may be covered if it's falling water by your basic renter's insurance, but not if it's rising water. So for example, if there were a mechanical failure like a toilet overflowing, or accidentally someone left a faucet on and something overflowed and it damaged your property, that could in fact be covered by your renter's basic insurance. If it's water intruding from outside, as rising water, it would not be covered. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Pop into that Q&A at the bottom of the screen. All right, so now we're going to look at what the policy language looks like on the insurance, what they call the declarations pages. This is what you get when you buy insurance. You would get a policy packet, which is a lot of small print and is usually dozens of pages long. But the first few pages are called the declarations pages, and they have the key information that you're going to want to be really tuned into and paying attention to make sure it matches your needs and what you think you're buying. And so in this example, you'll see the first part of the top of the page is the basic information like your name and mailing address so that you know that you are the one that is covered and insured by this policy. And then where you live, the residence premises. And those may be different addresses because sometimes people have PO boxes or other addresses they use for mailing, but you want to make sure that premises address is on this page as well, because it proves you have coverage there. And then whoever sold you the policy, the agency, their name and address should be there as well. Then the next section is the policy information. And here you would have your policy and account number for this policy, as well as the contact information for that agency and how to get in touch with them, their phone numbers for claims and for service, as well as their address. And then the next section would be the active date of the policy, which usually it should be for 1 year, and it shows the date and time it takes effect, and it would be in effect until that same time the next year, and the total premium on the policy. So this isn't the bill, but it should still reflect what your costs are for this, to purchase this policy. Then there is a section where you should see the discounts you qualify for in this policy. It's something they call loss-free, which means this person has had no prior claims with this company, and good payer, which means they pay on time. So sometimes these insurance companies will give you small discounts for these types of things. And I will go over in more detail the other kinds of discounts you can get, which is really good information to have, because very often we don't get what we don't ask for. And there are many discounts that can help reduce your cost. In this case, they had a $45 discount from a $151 annual premium cost. The next section is very important, and it talks about what's covered and what the limits are. But I'm going to kind of skip to the next slide that shows it in detail, a little easier for us to read. So here, you're going to see that on that first policy I showed you, you have 4 different types of coverage. And this is typical of renters insurance and homeowners insurance policies. Coverage C would be personal property, and that would be your belongings, your things. And in this policy, the limit is $10,300. So that would be the most you could recover if you had a total loss of all of your belongings. That would be the maximum number of dollars you could recover from this policy for the loss of your personal property. And then they have an additional $3,090 for that temporary living or loss of use or additional living expense. There are different names for it depending on the insurance company, but they all basically mean the same thing. You would have $3,090 to pay toward your immediate temporary needs if you could not live in your space for covered reasons of loss. Then there is a liability coverage section, and I talked about this already once, and we always say you have to hear things 3 times for them to soak in. So you'll hear this again from me probably here today. But the coverage E and F have to do with personal liability. So if someone was injured, if they had a bodily injury or their property was damaged, and you were accused of being at least partially responsible for that, there would be some coverage to protect and defend you under this policy and to pay for those damages. And then a very important piece of this puzzle is the final line item on this first box, which is the deductible. If you have automobile insurance now, you probably already know about deductible. Basically, in any type of property insurance, not so much in life insurance, but in property insurance, whether it's automobile, homeowners, or renters basic coverage, this is the amount that first needs to come out of your pocket, basically before insurance will pick up the tab for the rest of the damage. Most rental insurance policies offer a variety of deductibles, and the higher the deductible, the higher the amount you would have to pay first, the lower the premium cost of that policy would be. This is because the higher your deductible is, the less you're inclined to file a claim for small things, right? If you have a $500 deductible and maybe someone steals your phone and your phone was worth $300, you're not going to file a claim because you wouldn't recover any money. You would still have to pay the full $300 to replace that phone because the insurance wouldn't start paying until your loss was above the $500 deductible. If you have any questions about how that works, please pop them into the Q&A, and I'm happy to answer those specific questions because it can be a little bit confusing. You do not pay money to the insurance company when you have a loss and have a deductible. They just don't start paying you until that deductible amount of loss is reached. The second box here is just another way that different insurance companies list the same information in the first box. Personal property is usually called coverage C in many policies. Sometimes they just call it personal property. Sometimes they call it B. Loss of use is sometimes called additional living expense, or loss of, well, I guess it's just loss of use and additional living expense primarily, or temporary living expense. Personal liability and medical payments to others, we covered that. And in this particular policy, it's a $250 deductible, and the premium for the year, what you pay for that policy for the year, is $98 or $8.17 a month. So these are just 2 examples. Okay, so we talked in great detail about how deductibles work. But again, I just want to emphasize, if you keep a little savings on hand, or you really want to minimize the amount of premium you pay because you have to be very careful with every dollar, which many of us do, you can choose a higher deductible and still have valuable coverage for the really big bad things that could happen, like you losing all of your stuff. So we just want to encourage you to keep that in mind. There are ways you can tweak your policy to suit you better, and you want to talk to whoever you buy it from, the agent, about that. We're going to help you with a list later on that you can use so you can remember what to ask. So coverage C is for contents or personal property. And we suggest that everyone consider covering your contents for what it would cost to replace them, like new. That's called a replacement value policy, and that is what most insurers offer now. Be aware that there are special limits within the policy for certain types of belongings, and that's going to be my next slide. And that you may want to ask your adjuster to add additional coverage for certain types of things like jewelry, guns, valuables, and business equipment, because as you will see here in this slide, many of these things have limits. So even if you have $100,000 in insurance coverage for your personal belongings in a renter's insurance policy, if that policy has these sublimits, and you wouldn't be able to know that, it would be in the policy language, and you would ask the adjuster to point that out, or rather the agent, excuse me, to point that out to you, you would know that they will not pay you more than $200 if you lose money, banknotes or coins, no more than $2,500 on business personal property. This is important if you have and run a business out of your home and participate in shared economy, or just use your own business equipment in your home. The most you can be covered for is usually very limited in these policies, and you would want to buy an extra endorsement, they call it, or an extra sort of bump up schedule for that particular type of property. Again, the cost is fairly low and it's smart to do. So one of the most important pieces that we find people struggle with when they have a major loss is how to show the insurance company what they lost. Because if you have a loss, you have to demonstrate to the insurance company what you lost and what its value was before they pay you. And this is like kind of a cruel surprise, you know, after a really devastating event like a tornado or a fire, that, you know, you're looking at a pile of debris and your stuff is gone, and now your insurance company wants you to tell them in a detailed list what you lost. Well, the best way to handle that, it doesn't have to be a big deal, it doesn't have to be fancy or perfect, but is to have documentation of your belongings before they are lost or damaged or stolen. So we strongly suggest that on a regular basis, perhaps at the beginning of every year or every quarter or at a certain time of year, maybe when you do spring cleaning, you make a smartphone or tablet video of your belongings or take lots of pictures. And if you don't have the ability to do that yourself, then find a friend or family member to help you with this. Basically, you want to walk all through your home, inside and out, and document your belongings, open drawers, open closets, do close-up photos or video of things that are of greater value, like jewelry, guns, electronics, maybe get pictures of the serial numbers and the name brands of your things, like your bicycle, and those things that carry greater value. If you have a shoe fetish and you have lots of shoes, more than the average person, you might want to take some pictures of that so that you can easily document for the insurance company that you have more than a typical loss when it comes to shoes and clothing. We have a link here at the bottom of this slide that is a spreadsheet online that gives a typical inventory and can help you see the kind of thing you might end up having to document should you have a loss. and it can help you document your belongings now. Once you take those pictures and video or type up that or write down that list, you need to store them in a safe place. So we recommend that you email it to yourself if you have the ability to do that, or to a friend or family member, you know, on like a zip. You can email it to someone and make sure they've received it and they have a good copy of it, and they'll keep that for you. Or you can use a flash drive. This is a very common way that people store things like pictures and videos that take up kind of a lot of space digitally. They're very inexpensive. You can get them at most department stores or drugstores or office supply stores for a couple of dollars. And it has a little USB that connects to the port of your electronic device, and you can store those pictures and videos on a device like this. If you do that, you want to make sure that you keep that somewhere separate from your belongings. So give that to a trusted friend or family member, put it in a safety deposit box somewhere outside of your living space. So if your living space is damaged, you have access to it. Okay, so now here's the third round at the temporary housing information. This is just some more detail about that. For this type of coverage, which is often designated coverage D or additional living expense or loss of use, this you have to actually spend the money before the insurance company will reimburse you for it. Now, they may give you an advance. So let's say you have $3,000 of coverage. They may give you a check right away for $1,000 to help you get started. But to recover all of your additional living expense funds that are available to you, you would need to actually spend them on things that are considered covered by this type of bucket of coverage. And then you would need to present receipts or some proof that you spent this money in this way. So it might be a hotel bill, it might be a restaurant bill because you couldn't get to your home to prepare a meal, you had to eat out, and that costs more, so that's additional expense. It could be your gas bill or a record of the extra miles you had to drive because you couldn't live in your space. And those miles would be billable to this temporary living expense as a rule. And excuse me. So one other detail that I think is really important is that you check with your agent before you buy the policy to see what their particular rules are around this, because the policies can vary a lot on the temporary housing. And depending on how important that is to you, you want, you know, to check on that. If you have family nearby in the community that you could stay with, and this isn't that important to you, then you know, that's okay. Maybe this isn't going to be the focus of your coverage. But if perhaps you live far from friends and family and you would be in a real bind if you couldn't get into your rental space, then this would be important to you. And you'd want to double check that you had full coverage here. A nice benefit of rental insurance also here that I want to make sure we cover is that even if your space isn't destroyed, but the civil authorities, the police, the fire department, the state, the county, someone like that determines that it isn't safe for you to stay in your rental space, and they make that declaration, because it's, unstable, or it's threatened by wildfire, or the air quality is too bad from a fire. This coverage could kick in for 2 weeks and provide a safe place for you to live until that evacuation was lifted or the time limit was reached, whichever came first. Okay. So when it comes to buying renter's insurance, you can purchase it online. You can buy it from an agent. You can talk to that agent on the phone usually and deal with things electronically. And you want to get quotes from at least a few good companies. If you have already got life insurance, or you already have automobile insurance or motorcycle insurance, then you may want to talk to the agent that sold you that, because there are often discounts available if you have more than one type of coverage with the same company. There's a link here at the bottom of this slide. This is a really, really good document for you to find on our website and print off. And it's specific renters insurance tips for Coloradoans. And they're going to give you on this document other links that are useful for you too. So when you're thinking about, well, but how much, I don't know how much insurance I need. I don't know what my stuff is worth. You consider how much it would cost for you to replace those belongings and what type of risks. If you live in Florida, obviously your risks are going to be slightly different than if you live in the foothills of Boulder, or if you live on the plains by Greeley. You may have slightly different risks. Your risk may not be hurricane, but there could still be a flooding risk. There could still be a wildfire risk or hail risk. We really strongly recommend too that you shop around, and we have another link here, which is for Shop Smart tips. And within this are questions to ask your your agent, and it's just going to help you kind of go down a list and make sure you're covering all the important points. So some of the other things that can help you with the price of the insurance would be to remember to ask for discounts. Memberships to places like Sam's Club, Costco, AAA. If you belong to some sort of like professional association, if you're a trucker, if you're a student, if you're a carpenter, if you're a plumber, if you're in the military, all of those types of things can potentially connect you with organizations that allow you to get discounts on your insurance. AARP for seniors often provides discounts or access to special types of insurance policies. So literally ask the question, are there any discounts your company offers? Please send me a list so I can see if I qualify. Another important point is to clean up your credit score. Unfortunately, in this digital world, there are lots of ways that these companies can keep track of all the details of our lives. And sometimes that's good and sometimes that's not so good, because sometimes the information is not accurate. So they may have information from your credit score that is not accurate for you, or from what we call a clue score, which is another way they decide how much to charge you. And you have the right to look at those documents and that information and make sure it's correct and clean it up. Again, a higher deductible equals a lower premium. We already talked about all of this. This is one of the documents on the links that we have that you can print off and use. It gives you 3 spaces to compare different policies and all the important details that we've talked about today. Also, your tax dollars pay for a government resource under the state of Colorado, which is the Colorado Division of Insurance, and that's under the Department of Regulatory Agencies in the state of Colorado. And they basically regulate insurance companies. They help make sure that insurance companies are abiding by the rules of the state of Colorado and how they're supposed to behave, and that you have access to information about those insurers. You can check ratings of different insurance companies, and they have a premium comparison report that is a wonderful link. You can click right on there, and through that, you can click on different companies that operate in the state of Colorado, insurance companies. It'll bring you to their online site where you can get quotes. So this is a great resource. They also have some really great short videos. Those are the first two links where they can help you understand some of the information we're talking about today. And they often have all of this available in Spanish as well. Here is the phone number. If it's hard for you to do these things online, you can call 303-894-7499. And one of the consumer analysts that work for the Division of Insurance will be happy to speak with you and answer your questions and try to guide and help you. Okay, we're getting close to the end here, and I'm going to take a deep breath, and you can too. And I'm going to suggest again that you think if you have any questions yet that you'd like to ask, you can pop those to me now. And then we're going to move on, and we're going to do a very quick coverage of flood insurance for renters. So flood insurance of the mountains. This is actually a picture from a flood in Manitou Springs, Colorado, following the Waldo Canyon fire. And we certainly never thought we'd be seeing this. I live in Colorado Springs, and this is in just down near my neighborhood. And because of the wildfire that happened, changing the ability of the mountains to hold the rain. When rains came in the next few years, we had unprecedented flooding in places that normally don't flood. So it's just, you know, an example of what can happen nowadays where everything is changing with regard to the climate and the weather. And we're seeing severe storms and wildfires that are changing the lay of the land and making flooding and other things possible where we previously didn't see it. This is a document we have on our website that gets into more detail if you live in an area near wildfire loss. There are special policies that you can buy to be protected against flood damaging or destroying your property. As we said earlier, a regular renter's policy does not cover rising water flood damage. And the definition of a flood for the purpose of flood insurance is even more detailed than just rising water. It is an excess of water on land that would normally be dry, and it has to affect either 2 or more acres or 2 or more properties. So maybe you and your neighbor's property, or 2 acres of public land and your property. Those types of combinations. Before, the flood insurance program that the government offers would consider this a rising water flood event that would be covered by your flood insurance if you buy it. So Renter's Flood Insurance 101. This is the link at the top here that you can go on to get a quote and to buy flood insurance. There are also some private companies that offer flood insurance now. There's a new one, a new company. If you look, it's interesting. Online, there are ways you can buy flood insurance online that are not offered by the government, but you have to be careful that those are well-rated companies. And just do your due diligence. If you're going to buy flood insurance from someone other than either your standard agent for your regular renter's policy or the government. So you don't need to be in a flood zone to buy flood insurance or to benefit from flood insurance. And to cover your contents, you're limited to $100,000 in insurance. And it, again, is a separate policy from your landlord's. So if your landlord had a flood insurance policy, which hopefully they do if you live in a flood, a potential flood area, that would only cover the structure. You would still need to buy flood insurance if you wanted your belongings that were inside that structure to be covered. Under the National Flood Insurance Program, which for short is NFIP, that is the program most all of the people in the United States that have flood insurance are covered by this program. The private insurers have gotten out of the flood insurance for the most part for many years. There are a few exceptions. And there are a few companies that are getting back in now, and those are some other exceptions. But by and large, the National Flood Insurance Program is going to be the best option for many people because it's subsidized by your tax dollars. So the federal government uses federal dollars, which are funded by taxes, to supplement the cost of providing this insurance. You, again, are limited to $100,000 in contents, and policies start about the same price as you would have to pay for your other insurance, which is about $100 a year for a renter's policy. It covers furniture, clothes, electronics, rugs, throw rugs, curtains, maybe your microwave, if it isn't built in, artwork, that type of thing. Many of the same things that your renter's insurance would cover, but for a different type of loss. And there are some scheduled limits. Valuable items such as art and furs are limited to $2,500. What's not covered by flood insurance? Temporary housing. There is no temporary housing coverage for flood insurance. You do get it with renter's insurance, but not with renter's flood insurance. Money, stock certificates, not covered. Cars, self-propelled vehicles, not covered. Any property kept below grade, below ground level in a basement apartment or in storage in a basement, or maybe even a garden level apartment where it is below the grade of the land, that is excluded. So if you are in a basement below grade apartment, you want to make sure you tell your agent that so that you're not paying for insurance that wouldn't be of use to you if you actually sustain the loss. That's a really key point because not all of the agents will ask all of the right questions or make sure that they get this information from you. That's kind of going to be your responsibility. So when you talk to the agents, when you're shopping, you want to take notes and email back to the agent what you talked about. So it's documented. If they make a promise to you, if they tell you, oh yes, all of your belongings would be covered, all of your jewelry will be covered, we'll make sure of that. And then later you have a loss and you file a claim and the adjuster tells you you're only covered for $2,500 on jewelry, you have that email you can go back to, and you can prove to the insurance company that you were told your jewelry would be covered for the full amount. These are the kind of things we've learned the hard way. We see in the background, in the backside, after a loss happens. It's also a good idea if they leave you with some unanswered questions to just keep after it. Follow up by email and make sure all your questions are answered. We have a list of questions here, and we have additional questions in the links that I've already provided to you and that you will get from if you print off this document of the slides or go to our website. And then a kind of final piece of the puzzle is the fact that each of these policies is really only good for 1 year. So it's important, even though you may roll it over and it renews each year and you keep paying your premium, no one will necessarily contact you and say, how have things changed in your life that change how much insurance you need or want? So it's a good idea, as I mentioned before, once a year at least, to really think about your circumstances and update that policy and ask those questions and share that information about the major changes in your life with your agent. So maybe you get married, separated, or divorced, have a baby, get a new dog. Maybe you've moved. Maybe you've bought new furniture. There are so many different things that could change the circumstances that would make it wise for you to tweak the insurance coverage that you have. One more time around on the tips to make it cost less and still provide you coverage. Ask for different quote levels, for the different levels of deductible, what comes out of your pocket first, and compare those prices and make a decision that's best for you. Shop around, get 3 quotes from 3 companies and compare them. Make sure that they're apples to apples, that you're comparing the same deductible, the same amount of coverage, the same amount of additional living expense or temporary living. And be sure to mention that you want to know what discounts are available, and that you really press the agent on this, because there, I think I have 5 different discounts on my home insurance policy. Check your credit and that clue report that I mentioned. We have a link here that can help you understand what all of that means and what it is. And this is a slide that explains it in more detail. The clue report is 7 years worth of information about any claims you may have filed or claims that may be erroneously associated with you just because of maybe who owned your car before you, and the serial number of your car, the VIN number, is associated with claims. Or someone who lived in your home before you did may have filed a claim on that address, and that could be out of error associated with you and costing you money in your premiums. You can get a free copy each year so that you can read it over and correct the errors. And you just want to work to clean that up because that can save you money. COVID has changed a lot of behaviors and has reduced the amount of auto insurance claims in the last 2 years. When the claims go down, the amount the insurance companies pay go down, and often they have a rebate for their auto owners, and you can ask about that. I did get a rebate from my automobile insurance coverage, AAA. I called them and I said, I understand there may be a rebate, and I got a rebate. The same thing should apply that if you're driving fewer miles yourself, you want to let the auto insurance company know that, because that could lower your rate. And it may be that your automobile is old enough now that it doesn't make sense to cover the collision coverage, really doesn't pay off compared to the premium. Now, Colorado law requires that you have automobile insurance if you own an automobile and you drive it, but you don't have to have collision coverage. You may just be able to have the liability or the uninsured motorist coverage, and that could save you some premium dollars that you could then turn around and use to buy renter's insurance for your renter's belongings. And think before you file a small claim, because filing claims for small things can raise your rates over time. If you have a claim, if you have something bad happen, we are here at uphelp.org. We have tons of resources to help you with that. And the most important first tip is that you go on our website if something like this happens, and let us help you with our information. Take lots of pictures and videos of the damage, start a diary, save receipts. You're going to need to contact your insurance company in a timely manner, and you're going to want a copy of that policy that is certified so you know you're dealing with the right information. We have some great videos online and other resources that I've already mentioned. This is a picture of our webpage that has a video about renter's insurance with the actor Mario Lopez. So he's going to be way more entertaining than I am. If you want to take a peek at that video, it's available right here through this YouTube link. And we also have our upcoming workshops listed. This is the third in a series of 3 workshops we did for the Community Foundation of Boulder County. We are extremely grateful that they provided us with a grant and asked us to do this for you. And these videos will be available online if you want to share them with your friends or family, or if you want to go back and look back over and hear some of this information again so that you can absorb it all. That link will be made available to you, or you can find it at www.uphelp.org. So again, we are happy to be present in Colorado to be able to help people navigate their insurance needs. We encourage you to get prepared and to be strong and resilient in the face of all the changing challenges we have now. Thank you so much again to the Community Foundation of Boulder County. I'm going to look one more time and see if there are any questions in the Q&A, and say have a great day. Thank you.